more we struggle for freedom, the larger our concept of freedom has to become, right? We may begin thinking it's relatively narrow, that all we have to do is gain civil rights and we will forever be free. But I think that we have learned that there is a lot more to freedom than the law. If you look at the website, you see that you see that A New Way of Life has a tripartite strategy, and that there are 3 stages of support. And the first, it's like very basic. You know, you need to have someone pick you up from prison or jail, and you need, what do you need? You need clothes, you need toiletries, you may need assistance in gaining documents that we take for granted, like ID and social security cards and birth certificates and so forth. And there are also 12-step meetings and assistance in getting physical and mental health services, treatment if necessary, assistance in meeting parole conditions. Now, all of these things we might take for granted, but if you recognize that most people who get released never get beyond this stage because they don't get the most basic help. And not being able to get the most basic help, who do they turn to? And they end up placing themselves in a situation which makes them vulnerable once more to law enforcement and to the prison system. One of the reasons we are confronting these problems, the lack of education, and there's a connection between the channeling of resources into punishment and away from education and away from all of those services that actually helped to build human beings who have a sense of community and who have a sense of the future, who have collective dreams about tomorrow. It's often the case that individuals are held responsible for every step of the way on the trajectory that leads people into prison. And, you know, one of the points that I always make is that, you know, there's a reason why you see overrepresentation of some communities behind bars. That's a very simple reason, a very simple logic, but most people don't get it. It shows you the power of ideology. And that is, in some communities, there's little or no surveillance. And in other communities, there's hyper-surveillance. The communities are saturated with surveillance. So in some communities, you can do whatever you want to do, legal or not, and nobody's watching you. In other communities, you make one false step, and you're behind bars. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And we don't talk about the role of surveillance in producing this criminalization, in being responsible for the huge racial disparities that we see in our prisons among the population of 2.3 million people in the US. Many people who do go to prison, and particularly for long periods of time, realize that, first of all, the institution is not going to rehabilitate them. And, you know, even though Schwarzenegger, our governor, thinks that all you have to do is rename the department and rehabilitation is going to somehow magically appear, you know, without funding or whatever. But, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that many people recognize that they can refashion themselves. They can rehabilitate themselves, regardless of the inability of the institution to rehabilitate them. They can live the life of the mind. And if they learn how to live the life of the mind, they can survive that horrible experience. And they can assist those of us who are inhabitants of what is called the free world to know something about freedom that we would not be able to otherwise to know without their contribution. So, you know, I often say, I'd say to my PhD students, I said, you know, I have met people in prison who spend more time reading than you all do. And I say this because it's an indication that so many of the people who find knowledge behind bars, had they had the opportunity when they were younger to learn about the joys of acquiring knowledge, they would have never put themselves in a situation that allowed them to go to prison. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, for me, education is the major alternative to incarceration. We use this time that we have actually fought for to reflect very deeply about the past, present, and future history. History is not just about the past, it's also about the present, because we inhabit our histories, and our histories inhabit us, even if we are unaware of them. So, I want to say that we celebrate Black history because at its core is this determined and passionate and persistent resistance struggle. As a matter of fact, a whole range of resistance struggles participated in not only by Black people, but by people of other racial, ethnic, and national backgrounds as well. We can go back and talk about resistance to the slave trade, and resistance to slavery, and resistance to the capitalism which the slave trade enabled, and resistance to the denial of full citizenship rights of formerly enslaved people, but also resistance to the contemporary prison industrial complex, resistance to over-incarceration, resistance to the violence of imprisonment, especially violence against women, and resistance to the denial of full citizenship rights of formerly incarcerated people. And many of us follow the lead of critical resistance today in resisting the prison industrial complex with a demand for the abolition of imprisonment as the dominant mode of punishment, that is to say, abolition of privatization and corporatization and the whole structure that we call prison industrial complex. Okay.